Most people remember wrong the ending of Vice City. Everybody remembers Lance Vance's betrayal as a shock. One mission, keep your friends close, and suddenly the guy who fought beside Tommy for the entire game sells him out to Sonny Forelli. It plays like a twist. It's framed like a twist. And I think that's exactly why nobody goes back and notices that Vice City had been quietly building toward this for hours before it happened. Who Lance actually is before any of this. Lance and Victor Vance are the ones who pull Tommy out of the drug deal gone wrong that opens the game. Victor dies in that same botched deal. From that point on, Lance and Tommy are stuck together, not out of loyalty, out of necessity. Two guys who both got burned by the same people, teaming up because neither has anyone else. Here's a detail most players never connect, and it's not in the game at all. It's in who Rockstar cast to play him. Lance is voiced by Philip Michael Thomas, who played Ricardo Tubbs on the original Miami Vice, and the overlap isn't just the voice. Tubbs, the character Thomas is actually known for, is driven by revenge for a brother killed by drug dealers. That's not a coincidence Rockstar buried by accident. They cast an actor to essentially replay his own most famous role, wound and all, inside a fictional GTA character. Lance's entire emotional foundation was baked in before he ever says a line, and that foundation goes deeper than just losing Victor in the opening mission. Lance, Victor, and their younger brother Pete grew up in poverty. Their mother struggled with addiction, so it was their Aunt Enid who actually raised them, and Lance in particular saw her as his real maternal figure, not his own mother. This isn't a guy who lost his footing when Victor died. This is a guy who never really had solid footing to begin with. Here's the detail that matters, and it's easy to miss if Vice City is the only game you've played. Lance had a whole life before this. In Vice City Stories, the prequel, Lance spends years being overshadowed by his own brother, Victor, sidelined, patronized, never in the driver's seat of anything. There's an actual mission that proves it, called White Lies. Victor calls Lance out directly for a string of repeated failures, and Lance's reaction isn't to own it. He tries to throw away their entire cocaine shipment out of spite. That's not a one-off temper flash. That's the exact same self-sabotaging insecurity that shows up again years later in Vice City. That's not something Vice City tells you directly. You have to know the prequel to catch it, but it means Lance walks into his partnership with Tommy already carrying years of being treated like the lesser Vance brother. He's not starting from a place of confidence. He's starting from a place of already being second his whole life. The turning point most people can actually point to happens in Death Row. Diaz's men capture Lance and come close to torturing him to death. Tommy has to save him. That's not a small thing to happen to someone already insecure about being the weaker partner. Tommy physically has to rescue him, which just reinforces every doubt Lance already had about himself. It gets worse from there. In Bar Brawl, Lance is supposed to collect protection money and just fails to handle it. Tommy has to step in and do it himself, and he calls Lance out for it in front of other people. That's a real specific public humiliation, not implied, not subtext. Tommy openly criticizing him while the crew watches. And after Diaz finally goes down and Tommy starts building real power in the city, Lance doesn't get elevated alongside him. He starts making phone calls to Tommy accusing him of turning into exactly the kind of controlling figure Victor used to be, the same brother Lance spent years being overshadowed by. That's not a random insult. That's Lance projecting his oldest wound directly onto the person now standing where his brother used to stand. Here's where it gets interesting, because this is the part that actually supports the idea that his betrayal wasn't a last-minute writing decision. It was seeded well before the final mission ever plays. There's cut content from the game that reinforces this even harder. A deleted phone call from Kent Paul, one of Tommy's contacts, apparently warned him about an incoming robbery, which lines up with Lance's eventual double cross. There's also removed dialogue where Lance talks about the two of them ruling the city together as equals, a detail that never makes it into the final released dialogue, but which shows the writers had Lance's ambition and resentment mapped out well before the betrayal mission ever plays. I want to flag something here the same way I did with the Franklin ending video. This is theory territory, not confirmed Rockstar commentary. Cut content tells you what the writers were considering, not necessarily their final read on the character. But even without the cut content, the pattern inside the actual released game, the humiliation in Death Row, the public dressing down in Bar Brawl, the accusatory phone calls is more than enough enough on its own to argue that this was building for a long time, not a switch that flipped in one mission. Here's what I actually find most interesting about this. Rockstar frames the betrayal as a shocking twist. Dramatic music, a title card mission called Keep Your Friends Close, the whole emotional weight of your closest ally turned on you. And that framing works in the moment. It's genuinely a gut punch the first time you play it. But that same dramatic framing kind of buries how much sense the betrayal actually makes if you were paying attention. This isn't a big smoke situation where the character openly tells you his motive was money and fame after the fact. No ambiguity. Lance never gets that same clean confession moment. He just turns, gets his brief moment as a traitor, and dies for it almost immediately. The game treats his betrayal as a plot beat to shock you, not a character arc to understand. Even though if you go back and actually track his humiliations across the whole game, the why was sitting there the entire time. Here's the simplest way to put what actually happened to Lance across this whole story. He always saw himself as a leader. He wasn't. He was built to be a follower. At every year Tommy's empire grew, Lance felt that gap get wider. He didn't want revenge for Victor anymore by the end. He wanted a bigger slice of a pie he never knew how to run himself. So was Lance Vance's betrayal really the twist Vice City wants you to feel it as, or was it the most telegraphed turn in the whole game, dressed up as a shock? I think the evidence points pretty clearly toward the second one, a childhood that never gave him solid ground to stand on, a prequel mission that shows him sabotaging his own brother out of the exact same insecurity, a public rescue that humiliated him, a public dressing down in front of the crew, and accusations that reveal exactly what he was actually angry about. The twist music is doing a lot of heavy lifting here that the writing already earned on its own. One last thing worth mentioning before you go. Some sharp-eyed fans think they spotted an NPC in the GTA 6 trailer wearing Lance's exact white suit and purple shirt, walking the streets of Vice City. Nobody knows if that's a real callback or just a coincidence, but if Rockstar is planning to bring any part of his story back, I think this video just became a lot more relevant. What do you think? Did you catch any of this foreshadowing on your first playthrough, or did Lance's betrayal genuinely blindside you the way Rockstar wanted it to be? Let me know in the comments. And if you want me to dig into another betrayal in this franchise that might not be as sudden as it looks, tell me who to cover next.